God Eternal Oketra versus Morophon the Boundless. Haven't played this commander in a fair old while, so hopefully I still know what I'm doing with it. Tithe will... yeah, we're on the play, so that won't necessarily do as much good. But if we don't get into a third land, then at least we've got a means of getting into more lands with the Tithe. And you never know, our opponent might be mainly based in green and want to ramp out. Okay, a waste into Blade of the Blood Chief. That's curious, so that tends to be a combo piece. You see this in Gave decks particularly. Alright, we're getting into some lands, so that's not the worst thing if we've got a Walking Atlas. I play this because we can get into a lot of basics with something like a land tax or a Tithe, and it's pretty much one of the only ways to make multiple land drops a turn in mono white. Okay, Grim Monolith, and another land for us. So let's get down the Spear of Heliod, and then we will tap this and put another land into play. Looks like we're just playing against a colourless Morophon deck. And if we're seeing things like Grim Monolith, I think it might be an Eldrazi build. But I don't know if it is. Mishra's Workshop doesn't really tell us that it's Eldrazi, so I'm quite curious as to what our opponent's doing here. And there's the Paradox Engine, not banned in 1 versus 1, like it is in multiplayer. But a Paradox Engine and a Grim Monolith in play is not the best thing for us. Might be worth going for the Hour of Revelation sooner rather than later. An Icon of Ancestry, that's a new one from M20. And we'll see what tribe our opponent's going for here, because they have to choose a creature type. And it's, yeah, constructs they're going for, so an artifact construct deck. And there is a mana dork for our opponent. I think it's 10 permanents we need to make this cost 3. Going for the Blade of the Blood Chief onto the Mannequin. We don't quite have 10 non-land permanents in play yet, so we can't cast the Hour of Revelation for only 3 mana. Blade Splicer. Blade Splicer will help us to get our permanent count up. I think with only 1 card in our opponent's hand, we just have to really play our deck the way it's supposed to be played. So I'm going to go for our God Eternal Oketra here, and then we'll get a couple of tokens off of the Blade Splicer. So let's swing in at our opponent with the Walking Atlas. They can trade us there if they want to. Although predictably they are not going to. And then a Sol Ring from our opponent as well, so they are really going to make use of the Paradox Engine. If we get into a land next turn, then we're going to really blow out our opponent by getting rid of their big Morophon. That will cost them 9 mana to get back out again. And then putting the blade onto the Morophon. Okay, well there's an Hour of Reckoning as well. We could go for the Hour of Revelation now if we wanted to. I think instead we'll just swing in with our God Eternal Oketra. I might make use of her clause that puts her on top of the library. Puts her on top of the library, third from the top, that is. Okay, unfortunately our opponent decided to chump with the Mannequin, so that will put the number of permanents in play down for the Hour of Revelation. Revealing an Augmenting Automaton. So that is in their hand now. That puts a plus counter on the Morophon. Or actually a couple of plus counters on Morophon because it's a vampire. Yeah, I forgot about that. Blade of the Blood Chief does care about vampires. Yeah, let's just for the fun of it go for a Blade Splicer here. We'll get into a zombie token for casting a creature. Yeah, really could have wiped our opponent out here with an Hour of Revelation, but I don't really feel like going for that line of play. So let's just hold up the Tithe here, and we can guarantee a land next turn. In fact, we can put a land into play with the Walking Atlas off of the Tithe, can't we? Going for the Icon of Ancestry, and they're going to start generating some card advantage here. There is an Apocryphite. playing the Augmenting Automaton. And that untaps all the mana rocks, so they can go for more card advantage with Icon of Ancestry. Yeah, really interesting to see something different from our opponents here. Haven't seen a deck like this. And some people think in different terms to me. I tend to think that I want to see an interesting build go off as opposed to winning at all costs. So some people will be annoyed at this, that I didn't go for the Hour of Revelation, but I wanted to see what our opponent's aim was here, and it looks like it is literally just going for card advantage with the icon, and then playing cheap creatures, and then casting the cheap creatures and untapping everything and continuing the cycle, so they'll pretty much cast every creature in their deck as far as I can tell. And then we'll see if there's an actual combo that they can get into off of this. Laying down the Mere Battlesphere. And in response to that, I'm just going to go for the Tithe so that I can F6. And then we will tap down and play the Plains. And then we will pass the turn and see what our opponent does. I imagine they're just going to get a whole bunch of creatures into play here. But just deciding to leave it there. Yeah, I thought our opponent was going to go off there. They've got no cards in hand. Do we want to just Hour of Revelation? Well, we can try and get some damage through first, I suppose. Although, I don't think there's really any point in doing that. Yeah, let's just go for the Hour of Revelation. Oh, and I didn't change the zones on the God Eternal Oketra. I thought I'd held priority, but clearly I didn't do it in time. So we're going to have to hardcast our God Eternal Oketra. We get into a land next turn, we can do that. Our opponent, luckily now though, is nowhere near their Morophon, so I think we can outrace them. The Hypocrisite gains Suspend, so that will come back at least. Let's get down our Anthem, and we'll pass over to our opponent and see what they can rip into. I've lost many a game with my opponent playing off the top of the library, so we're not out of the woods yet. And Urza's Tower, so they do have Tron in the deck. We will just play our God Eternal Oketra, because we did manage to get into a land off the top. And then I will change the zones right now. So now it will go into the graveyard and into the library. Let's pass the turn, see if we can get commander damage off on our opponent. And there is a construct for our opponent. So that'll be a good chump blocker, and then they'll have an Hypocrisite come down next turn as well, so that's another good chump blocker. Let's swing in at our opponent and force them to chump here. And then do we want rid of the Tower or the Mishra's Workshop? I don't know if they have a big scary artifact, so I'll get rid of the Workshop. And then we'll pass the turn like that. Probably just going to exile the Hypocrisite, because it's going to keep coming back. And it's going to be a real pain for us if we have to keep trying to get past that. A Pariah Shield for our opponent. All damage that will be dealt to you is dealt to the equipped creature instead. Yeah, that's going to be tricky. Let's get ourselves into a token and a duplicate here. And then we will go in with our 4/7 double striker, putting 8 commander damage onto our opponent. So it's most likely going to be 2 more combat steps. And we will have our opponent out of the game. Oh, giving up once you've got down an Alhamrit's Archive. Our opponent might have gotten into some kind of... Well, I don't know what card draw they could have gotten into with colourless mana. But then again, if you don't have any card draw in a colourless deck, I don't know why you're running the Archive in the first place. So yeah, perhaps shouldn't have quit there. But let's see what we would have drawn into if Modo would be so kind. Getting into another land, and then the turn after a Disenchant, probably going on the Pariah's Shield if our opponent got into another creature. But yeah, I think we were likely to win that one, but our opponent, yeah, definitely with Emeria's Shepherd, I think. But our opponent shouldn't have quit there. I think they should have played for another turn or two and see what they drew into. But chances are we were going to win that one, so I don't feel too badly about our opponent scooping it up there. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this brief revisit to God Eternal Oketra. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.